I'm waving. We have Kath, Jane and Jill. Hello, hello, hello. Oh, lovely lipstick, Kath. Brilliant. So thank you very much, everybody. So we're just waiting for Jill.
Where
are you, Jill?
Can
we see you? Have you got your video on?
Yes. Hang on a minute. Has that done it?
I can see. Oh.
It says the video isn't supported in your browser.
Oh, we might just have to hear you then, Jill.
Oh, that's unfortunate because I've got some lovely pictures to show you. Why don't you start and I'll fiddle around in my browser just briefly.
Brilliant. Okay, no problem. So welcome. This is the final session of day one. This is a roundtable informal chat and discussion. Anything you wanted to ask about Woven in Kirklees, now is the time to ask it. So in the chat channel. But what we're going to do is have a bit of an intro, and I'd like all of the speakers to just tell us who you are and how you're involved in Woven in Kirklees. And then we'll just, we've got a few questions that might just get the ball rolling, but this is a really nice, gentle kind of exit or into the start of a Friday evening. And so, yeah, really this is to round off day one, but to hear more about Woven in Kirklees. So just to let you know that this is going to be a recorded session. And without further ado, I'm going to call out your names, roundtable speakers. Hello, hello. We're going to start with Natalie Walton, who is the director of Hatch and the Woven in Kirklees Festival. And we are going to share a film, aren't we, Natalie?
We are, yeah. So maybe actually if we do the kind of quick intros, then play the film, I think that gives a good kind of indication of what Woven is if anyone hasn't kind of come across it before, which I'm pretty sure everybody has. So I am Natalie Walton. I'm the director of Hatch, which is a company who was commissioned to curate the Woven Festival 2019. So I've been working with a group of incredible practitioners who have been working with communities, business, industry, artists, the university, and as many kind of communities of interest as possible to shape the Woven 2021 Festival.
Thank you very much. And then we're going to move on to Jane. Hi, Jane.
Hello. So I'm Jane Howroyd. I'm a creative workshop facilitator and visual artist, and I got involved with Woven because they offered, well, originally it was the original Woven Festival and I was involved in a small part of that, and then they did an open planning meeting for this year's festival, and I sort of got involved with that and got to work in one of the working groups for Growing Colour Together.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Jane. And Jill.
Hi.
Hi.
I got involved with Woven in 2019 because although I'm a community artist and I've worked doing that for the last 30 years, it's been in performing arts. But I have a passion for knitting and wool. I've done that all my life. Set up a sort of side project called Wild About Wool that captured people who were similar to me, Wild About Wool, and that grew. And then when I saw the Woven Festival was happening in 2019, thought got to have something to do with knitting and crochet, that kind of thing. And it's grown from there, really. I came then into the fold of the 2021 festival and have been organising the big rainbow knit.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Jill. And finally, Kath.
Hi, so I'm Catherine Haig. I'm the strategic lead for cultural development at the council. And as Nat's already said, we are in a working partnership and collaboration on delivering the festival. And I think the film will say everything that I need to say.
Brilliant. So without further ado, could Nicola play the film? Thank you, Nicola. Nick.
Woven is really about industry. It's about community, it's about place. And for the festival, it was about celebrating who we are as a district. It's about how textiles have shaped the whole place, where we live, from the architecture to the canals to the innovation and the industry. It's about how we're trying to reshape the perception of what the industry is as something from the historical perception to actually being a forward-looking, innovative industry.
Woven is a ground-up festival. The activities that are designed and developed are by communities, by organisations, by industry for the whole of Kirklees, as residents, as people coming in to visit, as people who work and as people who study. So it really is about a festival that celebrates but also includes everybody.
Woven as a festival has kind of brought Kirklees together, I see, because it's very, very inclusive, and there's many kind of different parts to Kirklees, and it's united them behind this kind of common heritage of textiles.
The whole thing was rooted in community engagement. It was at the very core of everything we did, and that to me is the most important way of working with people. It really meant that what we delivered was really had their name all over it.
Woven was an absolute success in my eyes because it celebrated the textile industry and the creative arts, and it brought loads of people together, academics, artists, just local people from the street. You know, the community spirit that I saw kind of come together was absolutely amazing.
It's festivals like this that help us all with our own well-being and be inspired to think about how we can make the world a better place and be change makers, but in a gentle way.
But this isn't just about looking back at what's happened in the past. It's very much about looking forward, looking at the opportunities, and it's about bringing together different aspects of textiles. But that combination of the artistic, the creative, with the industrial is something that for me is really exciting.
And it's just a great opportunity with Woven to start creating a legacy for the industry.
I think it's hugely important because I think there's a lack of understanding about the breadth of the industry that still exists.
It's about a sense of identity, that's what Kirklees is about in terms of its heritage and its industrial heritage. So it kind of creates a real sense of place, and it brings people together to do things they wouldn't do normally.
And I think I'm really interested in how it can be so many different art forms as well, that it's not just about textiles and even about contemporary textiles or just the science. It's about how we use music and how we talk to communities and how communities tell their stories through dance or music or theatre, or it's about storytelling, but it's about storytelling in loads of different ways.
It's limitless. It's really exciting, and because it is who we are, it is our DNA, it is our foundation. It means that we've got loads of room to play, to scope out, to experiment, to build upon. So I think the future is really positive for this festival.
Lovely. Thank you very much. So if we can come back into the screen. What a lovely way to start a roundtable discussion. And I was now just thinking back to the last festival and all of the activity that went on, and making me really excited about the next one in June. I just want to throw a question out to everybody as a starter. I think maybe just kind of riffing off what the little film was kind of showing in terms of showcasing what you've done in the previous iteration of the festival. What's been the importance of people for this festival and in this festival? The importance of people and working collaboratively.
Do you want me to answer that as a
yeah, you can all just jump in at any point. Yeah.
So I think for me, coming in as a curator, it's the life, the soul, the essence of the festival is the people who make it happen. I mean, you can come in and see lots of different things and bring them into a place, but that's not going to stick, and it's not going to be meaningful for people. And so I suppose the approach that we take is to open the floor to what people want to see as part of their festival. it has to be people of Kirklees Festival. And so it is the foundation for the festival, is the people, and that's what makes it. I think when we did the evaluation, we had 111 events over 9 days of the Woven Festival in 2019. And a third of all of those events were people coming out of their doors and doing and making the festival happen for themselves and for the collective. And that power and energy, you know, was just so overwhelming that it created the success of the festival and the foundation for creating the next festival. So it created the opportunity to develop working groups that have a voice to say, I'd like to see this as the festival next year or next time. And so that's the importance of it. It's the foundation for the festival.
Brilliant. And Jane and Jill, do you want to say something about what your experience of collaboration has been in that process? Jane?
I think starting from sort of the open planning meetings from the very beginning of the project and sort of coming into it from that, it's felt as though everybody has had a voice and been included in it, whatever discipline, whatever background you're coming from. There's been that opportunity to be included in the thought process and the development of the festival. So for Growing Colour Together, which is one of the projects as part of Woven that looks at sort of natural dyeing and sort of growing. So growing natural dyes, foraging them and sort of using them in all their different ways, which is sort of really varied from sort of the science side of it to the technology, to the design, to the art, to the manufacture, all of that, and drawing people in from all of those areas. So whether it's a conversation with a designer maker, a gardener, an allotment holder, or somebody that maybe has influence over how a garden could be designed, considering dye plants. It's a really inclusive way of getting sort of lots of people involved, and not necessarily people that would immediately sort of think of textiles as an area they would work in. So for example, we have people using their polytunnels to grow wood. We've got people in their own gardens and on allotments growing it, so that can be all sort of collected and used communally, potentially, fingers crossed, to assuming, you know, slugs don't get it or anything. So, you know, that idea that you've got people coming in and getting involved in textile that maybe wouldn't have seen it as something that they would, I suppose, initially sort of see as something they'd want to do, perhaps.
It's brilliant. And Jill, from your perspective with the big knit, how does collaboration has worked for you?
It's all about collaboration, really. I think it's quite interesting that, you know, sort of as I say, we were building on 2019, and I remember quite distinctly the conversation with Alison in the working group, and we were talking about, let's do something bold and challenging. And for the big rainbow knit, let's stretch ourselves. Let's find something that we need to risk, if you like, to put out there, which therefore that demands us to collaborate. Because in order to get it on, we need to build that collaboration and that participation. It cannot be done without it. So you have to take that leap of faith. So when we got the result of the poll that we set out, so which landmark in Kirklees would you like us to yarn bomb? And it came back with the pillars of the railway station. That certainly was bold, and it certainly has been challenging. We couldn't do it without participation. But we were clear that it would have a design intention. This was not just about covering something randomly with a set of squares or whatever. It had an intention. But because it is participatory, because we need to collaborate, it creates ownership. And it's interesting how that has grown and developed as the project has continued.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Kath, what's your experience of collaboration? You're going to probably a different experience of collaboration in this context, but
yeah, and I think what's really been interesting, I mean, it's great to hear how Jane and Jill and Nav described the festival. I think from a council perspective, we've been on this journey of transforming how we do what we do, and the textiles priority came out through a lot of consultation back in 2014-15, and the recognition of textiles being important, and then also talking to, in fact, the idea of celebrating textiles in some kind of big event was something that Bill Macbeth, who's the managing director of the Textile Centre of Excellence, because he was talking about how he's really struggling to get apprentices into the industry because of the perception of the industry at a local level, and how we need to really change that. So he was really kind of like, what can we do? And then further work developed, and we ended up into the position of commissioning Hatch on that basis, from the authorities thinking of being place-based, being with communities, being with partners, not us coming in and delivering and then everybody just crossing the bridge towards that ground up approach, as everybody's described. So I don't need to echo that, but I think for us it's that collaboration of knowing our role is really important with people and partners and the places that we work, and that's reflected in Temporary Contemporary, that's reflected in the Year of Music work. It's that same philosophy that's underpins all the work that we're trying to do. And I think you're on mute.
Sorry. Oh my goodness. Yeah, so knowing that ethos and, you know, driving forward that with that underpinning philosophy is it's about a shared endeavour, isn't it? It's about a shared commitment to engaging in that kind of a process, which leads me to just kind of maybe think about a little bit more, if possible, about what would you say has been the person-centered approach to creativity for you in your involvement in the working groups of the project, or as your curatorial approach to the project? People-centered approaches, what do they look like when we're doing people-centered approach to creativity in particular? Anybody?
Well, I think, sorry, Jill here.
Go, Jill, go for it.
Okay. For me, it is about creating a community where everybody, regardless of where they come into the process, feels valued and supported. And obviously, you know, we wanted to encourage people to pick up needles or hooks for the first time. And we also have been amazed at how more experienced crafters, wool crafters, have come into the process and just so generously given of their expertise and time. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about COVID, that a bit later, but it has been interesting how we have still managed to do that, and maybe have done it better in the situation that we have been in. But yeah, for me, it is about creating something that everybody identifies with and feels that they are part of. And I do that across whatever art form I'm working. I think that is key.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I've just recently done, Jill, which is a bit late in the day, and I'm sorry I didn't even knit a square for the big knit, but I've just joined the Facebook group. And what's been absolutely glorious is to see all of the posts of people, of all of the submissions, of which how many thousands did you receive?
14,000.
Yeah. Which is an amazing, but I love that Facebook group because it's like, actually, you know, here's the result, and it's going to be amazing to see how it all comes together. But yeah, I think that is also just a really simple tool to think about what's the sense of belonging that we can cultivate in this particular context. Yes, Natalie.
Yeah, I think that's what we've experienced. So the brilliant thing about Woven is that it includes so many communities of interest. So we've got people of knit and natter, we've got people who are interested in growing, we've got people from industry, we've got people from the university doing their research. So today has been incredibly rich as a curator, listening to everybody and thinking, are we touching on all of these aspects, and are we kind of hitting the elements of the things that people are interested in through the Woven Festival? And luckily, I think I'm almost ticking a lot of those boxes, which is brilliant. But the real joy of people-centered work, and the thing that it's almost kind of like we're a little bit missing at the minute as well, but we are getting through those social channels, is the joy of place. So that, when I first kind of started, Kath, I think, kept saying textiles is in the DNA. And it's the passion of people across all of the different sectors that we work with that is so enthusiastic and infectious that it is kind of, driving the festival forward. And even now, I mean, through COVID, we have not necessarily been able to connect with industry in the way that we wanted to. We wanted to put them up front and centre, but a lot of industry is firefighting and in crisis. And, but we've kind of put, calls out and said, we need donations, we need this, we need that. And industry is coming back going, we want to give you, can we help? And that across all of the different sectors is just the magic of people-centred approaches, is that it captures the heart and soul.
And if I can take a radical leap here, is that people-centered approach to what you've been doing is also about visibility and awareness, isn't it? It's kind of consciousness raising around what this thing is, but also to kind of, I think there was a lot of stuff that we were talking today about things being invisible or hidden from view, and the importance of bringing them into visibility, and allowing creating much more of a kind of awareness of what's out there. And I think that's one of the advantages of this festival, that it is actually attempting to kind of bring together a range of many diverse approaches that are all over Kirklees and beyond. We just needed the task of you and the community to bring it together, to bring it into visibility. I think that's yes, Natalie.
Go for Kath. Go for Kath.
No, I just was. I think from my perspective, so I've worked in local government for about 14 years, something like, in cultural development. I've worked on things like British Art Show 7, to project manager there, big national events, forced various different things like that, to instigating and setting up Plymouth Dance, because I was down in Plymouth. And they were all kind of a different, some were very clearly top down, visited, and you kind of have to build the bridge out. Plymouth Dance was about fitness and health of young people, and that was kind of the birth of why we did that. But we still then had to encourage people to go out, and I think and it always had engagement and people at the heart, but not in the way that I think we've been able to realise through this, by being truly place-based, by being people-centred. Because actually, I have more people talk in different areas and different parts of the authority and different groups talking about textiles and talk about woven. We don't need to come of, normally we have to advocate and sell things. We don't, it's the other way around. It's like we're having, it's managing expectations. It's like a very different set of circumstances. People are really passionate, want to get involved, and you don't want to let people down, you don't want to disappoint. But it's really hard when you're trying to realise that when so many people want to be part of it. And I think that's that philosophy where if you get that right combination, as Jill has said, and we've described before, that you're already doing the thing that people do, and it's just about making that visible.
Mm-hmm. Natalie.
Totally following on from that, which is exactly what I was going to touch on, is about managing expectations, and the fact that so many people want to be involved, and that's indicative of the big knit, and it's so successful. But it's also, there are so many facets, there are so many stories to tell, there are so many lobbies to support support and help through Woven, that it's kind of, how do you bring about everyone's voice and achieve the things that everybody wants you to achieve as part of that festival? And that's the massive challenge. And I think that's also brilliant in terms of Kirklees Council for thinking about longevity. So not kind of going, right, this is a 2019 festival and we don't know what we'll do after, but by saying we're committing to the festival for a number of years to develop that longevity. And it kind of goes back to some of the conversations earlier about sustaining and engaging projects, and then not just piloting in doing a project and then not having the funding to continue. There is an element of being able to continue those conversations for a longer period of time than if it was tiny little project funding.
Absolutely. Which maybe kind of leads on to the next question I have. I'll just ask a couple more questions, then we can throw out to the audience. Monica, I'm sorry to put you in the spotlight. You've got your video on. If you wouldn't mind turning your video off, and then because we want to just pin. Sorry to say, it's awful, isn't it? Just want to pin the speakers. That's it. Bless you. Thank you so much. Yeah, so the festival and COVID, obviously, not been an easy set of circumstances to negotiate. Could you talk a little bit about how you've adapted to COVID and how it's worked for you? Or how the festival has had to adapt itself to the circumstances that we're in? Natalie, maybe.
Yeah. So I think, like most people, well, I suppose first and foremost, I think it's kind of relevant to say that the festival tries not to just pop up in June and be there during June. So it's not like, we've not had the impact of COVID throughout the year because we're a festival just in June. So you've just got to think about June. And therefore, throughout kind of from 2019 all the way through to June 2021, we have been thinking about programming, about partnerships, about, how we continue to tell stories online and through social media platforms and through events and various different ways. And so I suppose, like most organisations and most projects and things that have been happening, we did turn to online. And I think, like most people, have kind of found the benefits of a lot of online practice. So talks being able to reach new people, and particularly international audiences where we wouldn't necessarily have considered that as part of the Woven Festival at this stage in our development if it hadn't have been for moving online, which I think has been fantastic. As Jill will kind of testify, the ability to really drive practice through social media and build communities through social media platforms, I think has been immense with some of the projects. But I do equally think that, we're in that dilemma of being a June festival and the fact that, we are seeing a lot of online activity. And will people want to be online in June when the sun is out and people want to start getting together? So, it is that kind of constant assessing and evaluation of physical engagement and online kind of activity, and how do you do the physical with less people, or manage that whole kind of flow of people, but use the online to strengthen that wider reach as well. So I think those are all the things that we're constantly tackling and constantly thinking about. So how do you not exclude your new audiences because you're then kind of going into a physical presentation? And I think that's the big thing for probably everybody thinking about coming out of lockdown and thinking about, all sorts of different cultural sectors is how we take that forward as a whole sector, really.
And does that lead into, maybe, I don't know if Jane and Jill are able to comment on this, of like, because it's a process, you're absolutely right. I mean, I don't know whether the rest of the world assumes that a festival just kind of happens in June, just pops up fully formed, but actually it takes, years and years of of you know, painstaking labour, and it's a very complex and adaptive and a live process, isn't it? And I wondered whether the unique experience of COVID and having to negotiate these conditions, whether you've thought about what are the new forms of resilience that might have emerged in this process, and particularly around, you know, trying to kind of think really, really creatively about how to negotiate the restrictions. I don't know whether Jane and Jill could comment on their experience in this process.
I think in terms of growing colour together, one of the projects that I think has been a really interesting sort of journey for it was the schools project. We were working with 3 artists. One of those we were hoping to create a sculpture as part of the sort of festival month, as part of the sort of weekend for growing colour together. And she's a printer and she wanted to have artwork from children that could be included in this thing. And obviously within the sculpture, and obviously with the lockdowns, the plan originally was to send sort of packs into schools that could go in, and then with the lockdown and the sort of pressure on schools to do things online, to move all of their learning online, that didn't happen. So it's been quite, so the videos have now that were produced for the schools have now gone to a much wider audience. And I think this is sort of showing how, you know, we're reaching more people who maybe wouldn't have, it would have been 3 schools. Now it's sort of multiple schools, multiple audiences, adults sending things in, families sending things in, as well as the schools, as well as the work that now can continue with the schools, the original schools. And it's that sort of, I suppose, adaptability and sort of, it's almost like a fluid movement, being ready to change and sort of go with the change of it. And I think there's been some really surprising and sort of happy outcomes from that. And I think that the schools project Growing Colour Together has really sort of shown that, I think.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Jane. Jill?
Yes.
What about you? What do you think forms of creative resilience that you've developed throughout this process as a result of COVID?
Well, what's been amazing is that, you know, sort of, in a way, creative people have been knitting and crocheting and felting for this project as part of their resilience. It's been feeding that, and you know, sort of that's kind of fed each other as well through the social media platform in a way that I had no idea that it would happen like that. And it, after sort of kickstarting it and kind of giving it its, I suppose, atmosphere. Can you have atmosphere on a social media site? I think so. The culture of it, exactly. The culture, setting the culture of it was important at the beginning. And I go back to what I said before. We're setting that culture to be inclusive, to be friendly, to be positive, to nurture. And, you know, we've had a couple of people on the site who have been very needy in terms of contacting us, wanting, you know, but they're still there. We've just got to know how, we've got to know them. Okay, you're okay, that's fine. We take turns to be able to keep you know, particular people going and encouraging. And but I suppose in a way, you know, people say it for themselves. I've got a couple of things here. We asked for some feedback from people about it. It said, in this time of isolation, it was heartwarming to be part of a local community project and share it with friends whom I have been unable to see during COVID restrictions. So I just, that whole place-based thing that we were talking about as well, I think as well is something that we should look at post this festival. because yes, it is very much, you know, where we are yarn bombing an iconic bit of Huddersfield. And people have joined us from all over the country, all over the world, I am going to say, because they have. Some with a direct connection with Huddersfield, but some with a connection to what we are doing in Huddersfield. And I think that's so their community isn't place-based. To a certain extent, our big knit community isn't place-based in terms of the people, but they are people who are making contact with us in Huddersfield because of, you know, and that reach has been inspiring to me. And again, somebody says on the page, a sense of connection to other knitters, even though I'm miles away, and doing something that will make a positive difference. And that positive difference as well is something that I have learned. Because of course, you know, if you're going to put time and energy, even into learning to knit and then making a square, you know, so many people that there was a resistance, if you like, from, for example, they won't mind me saying this, I'm sure, the Knitting and Crochet Guild, when we first put the project in, and their resistance was, well, what are you going to do with it afterwards? Because so often we see these things made and then they're just thrown away in the bin. And you'll be amazed how many people has asked me, where's it going? Because we don't want to do it unless, you know, it has a positive benefit. So we've got a number of charities that we are talking with about donating blanket-sized pieces, which we are so part of the installation is being built on the fact that we can take it apart in various blanket-sized pieces that will go on to benefit charities, and that is a purpose. So that's another purpose that people have signed up to, which has made the project so strong.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Jill. Have we got any questions from the audience? I think there was one up. I've just got to scroll up. Natalie giving a talk out about the resilience of teachers as much as everybody else. Absolutely. I wonder if we could talk a little bit about before we kind of move into bringing a close to the first day, a little bit about the long-term legacy of Woven in Kirklees. What's the long-term ambition, do you think, of Woven in Kirklees? What do we need to kind of think about in relation to that, in terms of the embeddedness of the festival?
I think I'm going to step in here. I think what's really interesting for me is, I mean, we use the phrase of instigate by the council but owned by everyone. And I think what we need to do post festival is really look long and hard about what is that structure and how does it grow and where is it best placed? Is it best to go independent? Is it best to be in the authority? These are all conversations that you know, I need, as the representative of the council, need to take internally so we can explore for that sustainability, because we want it to be the strongest it can be. So we just need to review where that is. And that kind of sounds like a really political answer where I've said a lot of words and not said anything, but it is that kind of, there is a genuine commitment to Woven. I hear it on every level of the organisation, and people are asking me about it. Other services are actually raising funding for it in the way that you would normally be on the outside asking people for support. People are saying to me, I've raised money for your project here, how can we do this? And it's a phenomenal position to be in. So we just need to explore and have some downtime post festival and explore what is the best vehicle for the festival so it continues to grow and continues to serve community, industry, education, the science and innovation, and those kind of key strands across the board. And it's that kind of multiplicity of the festival that makes it so vibrant and so strong, that there are different different elements and entry points in for people, and I think we just need to keep hold of that in any way that we can moving forward.
Absolutely. Yes, Nat.
And I think that's particularly important for Hatch, because I suppose we always see the festival as coming from consultation from people, but also being hand in hand with the council and council agendas and council aims for the benefit of people in Kirklees. So that's a really strong driving force, which is about this needs to benefit people in Kirklees. And so I suppose as Hatch, we also kind of tussle with the fact that we shouldn't equally own the festival either. And we try to make sure that our logo is very, very small on things, and we're not, you know, it's not a Hatch thing, it's a people owned thing. So how do you put an infrastructure in to create something that is people owned? So and it's quite it's such an interesting conversation that we're constantly having about what is that infrastructure, what's the governance, and how does it belong to many but yet has to be structured and delivered. So it is that kind of constant dilemma, but I think it's such a good dilemma to have, because it means we're absolutely in the right place with the festival.
That's brilliant, thank you.
Can I just
yes,
sorry, can I just start that legacy one, because I think as well it is about for me I go back to the individual, and it is about that people build skills and passion for textiles across the board, whatever it is, you know, not just knitting or whatever. So as illustrated as part of a legacy, I'll just read you one more quote from somebody who just put this on, I think today. Hello, so I started knitting properly just before Christmas. I made my first square for the big rainbow knit, the misshapen pale yellow one with holes in. She gives me a picture. I posted it here and received so much encouragement and warmth that I carried on, and I knitted all these. And then there's another picture of a lot of different coloured squares. I've even ventured into stripes and ribbing. I've thoroughly enjoyed making them. Some are better than others, and I've decided my next project will be a baby blanket. Now there's a legacy. That is a legacy of a woman being part of this and growing her skills and having, you know, a vision for what she wants to do. And I think it's a metaphor really for, you know, sort of how this festival can really shape and drive, you know, sort of creativity in textiles in Kirklees.
That's lovely. That's lovely. I've got one final question that I think that I'd like you to potentially answer, if that's possible. It's the takeaway question. What takeaway are you having tonight? No, it's not that takeaway question. The takeaway question is, what? Sorry, I couldn't resist it. Oh, what is the key takeaway from being involved in the festival that you would like to share with everybody?
Oh.
The key takeaway from being involved in the festival that you'd like to share?
I think for me, the key takeaway is that it is the community aspect of it, the shared aspect of it, that I suppose it's that community, sort of the fact that it does feel like a community, it does feel like the community is involved in it. And I think for me, that would be the key takeaway, that, you know, you have that community feeling there, that sort of shared voice and influence within that community as well, I suppose.
Brilliant, thank you, Jane. And Jill?
The key takeaway for me, I suppose, is that that everybody is touched by textiles in some way in their lives, and to build that confidence within people about how that has affected their lives and how they can use that as a creative salve in their life. Salve, I mean, as in, you know, sort of smoothing and enriching their lives, is something that you know, it's been so much part of Kirklees' heritage that most people understand it. Most people understand how this enrichment through textiles and through that kind of thing. So yeah, it's worth celebrating and continuing to celebrate it.
It's lovely. Thank you, Jill. Natalie.
Wow, how do you add to all of that? I suppose the key takeaway for me of being part of the festival is that when you find the right thing, it can be the linchpin for so many different people. And I think, as Jane has kind of said before, it's the people who wouldn't ordinarily associate with textiles, and it's the different conversations that you can have across different communities of interest. And it's about, as Jill says, the excitement of the fact that when I talk to people from the research centre, Technical Textiles Research Centre, of just how innovative and impactful textiles is on our everyday life, that, you know, you've got everything from knitting to medical textiles that literally does save lives, or the impact of woven as a technique on, you know, welding together aeroplanes. And you kind of go, oh my goodness, there is such an enormity to what we've got to convey. And it terrifies me as we do at the festival, because it is huge, and it excites me because people don't know about it. And we're not going to tell all of those stories, not even in 2 festivals. But the ambition to tell all of those stories is there. And the more people get involved, the more we can tell those stories, because they're coming out constantly. And it's the excitement of all of those stories that we still need to tell. That is my takeaway.
Brilliant. Kath.
Blimey. I mean, I could echo what everybody has said. You know, community and science innovation. I think, rather than repeat, I think for me, additional ones, that sense of civic pride, of that forward-looking history, that actually, you know, we are built on innovation, that ideas, that creativity is phenomenal, as Nat's alluded to, and, you know, machines that have been invented to look at how material is fire retardant, things like that, which is, you know, launched with Greenpeace. And, you know, can we change our relationship? We have to change our relationship with clothes. That's the fundamental fact for climate emergency. And it starts with all these different conversations that we're having. So I think, in addition to the community cohesion, to the science innovation, to various other things that everybody's discussed, I think, you know, I'm a mother, and my driving thing is always trying to leave this place in a better, because I just, you know, it's like you look to your children and think, what is the space that they're going to live? And if we can do that in addition through this, which is another massive ask, which is, you know, not in any of the KPIs or measurements, but if we can, Nat, come on, we can do this. But if we can change people's relationship with textiles and their understanding of the process of textiles, I think that would be really amazing.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. I think I'd like to bring, if possible, Andrew Hewitt into the room, because we're going to draw. This is amazing. Thank you for all of your contributions to this roundtable discussion, and got a deeper insight into woven in Kirklees. Now is the time to draw today, day 1 of this conference, to a close. But I'd like to ask Andrew to give us a bit of a brief, if you wouldn't mind, of what's happening tomorrow.